This is it.
Is this where he came from, Mummy?
Or I'll come to find us. Like I showed you, okay? Now!
Hey, motherfuckers. It's me. All clear?
This town made a deal with that thing. You broke that chain when you stopped him from returning. And when he missed the gateway, a timer started.
With MJ Dixon, the director of 2 projects that we have in, I believe. We have the Wrath of Thorn, which we're showing on Saturday, the 1st of March, on Screen 8 at 2 p.m. But MJ also did a short movie in the Horrorscopes Volume 3 Dark Zodiac on Saturday, the 1st of March, Screen 8, 5 p.m. A little bit of a double bill for us there, MJ.
MYCHO Grindhouse afternoon.
I like that. That's the name of the episode. That's the name of the episode now, by the way.
There we go. That's,
Firstly, this is, I believe, the second time I've done like a little bit of an interview with you. But I like to pretend like it's the first time we've kind of met, because this could be the first time somebody is meeting you in our video or on anywhere they're listening or watching or anything like that. So I like to ask the question of, nice simple question, where did it all start for you? How did you get into the filmmaking industry, and why on earth would you do it?
Oh God! So there's $1 million question, or the minus, $1 million question. I guess is probably more apt. I want to do a job that feels like I want to do a job that like I'm excited to go to every day and will be fun. I get paid money for it, And then I was either to be a paleontologist, like Ross from Friends, pre-Ross from Friends, of course, or make movies and be a writer or make movies was kind of the two things. Kind of felt like the same kind of thing. And yeah, you had to take like loads of like boring ass history stuff to study dinosaurs. So I was like, okay, filmmaking it is. But it was one of those things where, especially when I was growing up in like the kind of 80s and 90s, like that was, it wasn't very accessible. So it didn't feel like a thing I could actually do. So for a long time, it was just like a pipe dream of sitting and writing scripts that I never thought would ever be made. And I'd turn video covers inside out and draw the covers for my own movies on them and draw little screenshots on the back and do little synopses and things and then fold them backwards and put them. So I had my own little collection of movies that, when I was a kid. And that just, I guess I just never stopped doing that for like 30 years, really, until eventually I was like, I should probably make some movies to go in these boxes of, of these things. But yeah, it was just really, I was studying to be a HTML web developer back when that was like the in thing to do. And I really enjoyed it, but I just couldn't see me doing it and being happy, like fulfilled, I guess was the... And so, I found out they were like doing like a late start at the media college, at the media center of the same college, a few miles away from my house. And I found out that for 3 hours a week, you got to take these big TV cameras out and shoot some footage, and then and then in the afternoon you'd have to edit it or whatever on the big tape machines. And I was like, these cameras took literally a full-size VHS tape.
Yeah.
Standard one, like you had to get like something called a super VHS tape, which had like a stronger signal or a better quality signal. So it was all, even then, it wasn't particularly accessible. But I went and did this thing, and the rest of it was like studying newspapers and how they affect society and like genre. How did film noir? What are the key kind of concepts of film noir and all this, and watching kind of Italian neo-realistic cinema from the the end of the war and stuff, and I was like, boring. And I spent all my time just writing scripts, waiting for this 3 hours on a Wednesday morning every week to go and make these movies. And I just did that for ages. And that's kind of what got me like really in love with it. And then I went to a proper media college eventually in Newcastle a couple of years later, and studied how to make TV programs and music videos and stuff, along with narrative film. And then I was just gonna, I guess I thought I was gonna go and just do my own thing. And the whole class went out for a drink at the end of it, and I always feel really bad. I can never remember this guy's name at all. It was a guy I'd never talked to for like hardly talked to the whole 2 years we'd been at this place. And we got chatting at the final drinks before we all left. And I said, "Oh, what are you doing next?" And he says, "I'm going to go to university." I said, I'm done with education. And he said, No. He said, I said, "I don't care about that." He said, "I'm going to go and just use all their fancy gear for like 3 years to make some movies."
Yeah.
And use that as a calling card. And I was like, this guy's a freaking genius. But yeah, then I went and spent 4 years at the University of Central Lancashire, just basically borrowing off fancy equipment. And I made, I think, about 25 short films in that time.
Wow.
All terrible. But every time something was a little bit better, like I'd go, "Oh, the lighting in that was really crap, so I'll invest in some lighting." "Oh, the sound in this one was terrible, so I had a phone and an extension to get it closer to." And I just did that for like, 3 or 4 years. And then in the final year, I just sat, looked at all this stuff and went, okay, I know it's not very good, but why? And I looked at it all kind of, what's wrong with it? And really sat and broke it down. And then I made a little short film called I Spy for the Horror Channel. When they used to do like a 2-minute shorts kind of thing, that it didn't win any of the prizes at that thing because there was like a top 6 or something that won some money or something like that, or a DVD collection or it was something, something horror related. I can't even remember exactly what it was, but I ended it into like a couple of other things. And it won the. Do you remember the 8 Films to Die For series back in the kind of Central one? They ran a competition called 8 Shorts to Die For, where they run shorts alongside these features, and that film won that. It was voted the number 1 film by Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, and I was like. Amazing, but then suddenly I would get a lot of emails saying, "Oh, can we interview you about this film?" And and every time, every interview I did, the question was the same: "When are you gonna do a feature? When are you gonna do a feature?" And I was like, "Oh, right, so people take me seriously as a filmmaker, suddenly," and that was it. So I tried to get a feature off the ground, which kind of gradually fell apart at the 95% complete stage. But while all that was happening, I'd also, because I did that with a bunch of people, while that was happening, I'd written a film during college. I'd written a little film called Slasher House, which I'd planned to kind of maybe sell to someone. And over the years, that kind of developed into kind of its own thing with different spin-off movies and stuff, And so I was like, oh yeah, I could probably make this on nothing. Well. Or as I thought, I could probably make this on $500,000, and then I could probably make this on 100 grand, 50 grand, 10 grand, 4 grand. Okay, right, okay, there we go. And that's kind of how it went. But yeah, then that was my big beginnings, I guess, of actually making movies.
Awesome, and what a way to get in. I love the idea of. A lot of people, when I speak to them, is sort of how did you get into it the traditional way, or was it just learn by doing? And they say, oh, you don't necessarily have to go to uni, you don't necessarily have to go to college, just go in and do it. And there you are. Yeah, go use all that fancy tech. I love that.
I see all these young filmmakers, and they're filming on way better cameras than I will ever have access to. Because I'm not a student anymore, and I'm like, yeah, fucking do that.
I love that idea.
I wish I'd done it. I wish I'd done it now. Like, you know, when, like, you know, just walking in and picking up like a red dragon and going like, okay, I've got to make my first short film on this, you know, on the fucking one of the best cameras in the fucking world. Like, just madness.
That's a wicked bit of advice, to be fair. So, before we get into Wrath of Thorn, because you just mentioned there, you made Slasher House, and then you had all these other films that sort of like spawned off it and spawned away from it. And obviously, the MYCHOVerse is a huge part of what you do. But before we do that, how pissed off are you right now with the Winnie the Pooh verse and the MCU stealing your idea?
Well, the MCU, like, I mean, I get it, because the whole MYCHOVerse thing was kind of born out of like this kind of like, I love when comics cross. I'm a massive comic fan, like, you know, like anyone who knows me knows that. And I used to love when, like, you know, like the Thing and the Hulk would suddenly like, all right, let's have this issue of Hulk featuring the Thing, you know, in the battle to end all battles, and I love that. And I was like, but I mean, because I think a lot of people go, oh, so it's kind of like the MCU in terms of the MYCHOVerse. But to be honest, I was more inspired at the time by the Universe, the Kevin Smith thing, where like the different films kind of crossed over, you know, and you had different characters kind of popping in and out. And so it was kind of an amalgamation between like the comics I was reading at the time, which were like mainly like Marvel stuff, and Kevin Smith's thing. But then the MCU came along, like, because I'd said for years, why don't they do that? Why don't they make these movies and cross them over every now and then? And people were like, oh, no, it'll never happen. And then, wham, like, right on the cusp of beginning this project. Like, actually, they were a couple of years behind us. We kind of come up with the whole thing, and then they went, oh, well, we'll do that. We'll steal your idea.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure Kevin Feige was sitting over my shoulder, like, I was like, well, don't make it look exactly like this, Kev. You know, and then the Winnie the Pooh guys, I guess I have no idea if they even know that I exist, you know. But I wouldn't be surprised if they'd at least glanced at our kind of roadmap and gone, okay, I see what's going on here. I mean, ours is a weird one, because we start with the crossovers first and see what sticks, and that's always been a really good plan. Because initially, again, like for us, Slasher House was going to be like the third or fourth film that we did, but realistically, looking at the script, it was probably the most budget-friendly one. So it was like, okay, well, if we do that and see who's popular, and then we'll spin off from that, and that became our kind of business plan, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's frustrating, but at the same time, you know, creativity is creativity, I guess, and people are doing what they're doing. I've always been a little bit kind of do my own thing kind of person, so it's, like they can do what they want. I've never watched any of the Pooniverse things, so
I wish they wouldn't call it Pooniverse. I really wish they would.
I think that's hilarious. I'm sure there's like a XXX film series with the same name, though. So,
but Wrath of Thorn being your 11th feature in this universe, and still more to come. How did obviously starting off with the Slasher House and then going through, but how did Thorn kind of become your almost de facto Thanos, if you will?
Well, I guess I have to be very careful here, because I get myself in like some like James Cameron style legal hot water. But essentially, like I wanted to make like a film, you know, based like a fan film kind of thing, based on like a kind of I won't say who, but like a, you know, like an infamous kind of screen serial killer. It was like a franchise I was a really big fan of. But the more I kind of developed it and I had these ideas, the more it was moving away from what the original stuff was. Yeah. Also, kind of, or like, I'm going to put a whole lot of work into this, and then I can't do anything with it. So what I did is I basically took anything from that, anything that had been inspired by like kind of like real life stuff, anything that had been inspired by like real life, you know, like real world things, and I kind of just took that stuff and said, okay, well, like, what have we got left with this, and kind of went through all that, and I really just delved into kind of like similar mythologies that film series had used, and just kind of did my own thing with it completely, and that was kind of its own thing for a long time, and it was always planned to be a trilogy of kind of short-ish films, which was Mask of Thorn, Elixir of Thorn, Wrath of Thorn. They're going to be about 30 minutes each, but over time it just kind of expanded out. And when I was doing Slasher House, I ended up combining two of the killers into who would become Cleaver the Killer Clown. But then that left like a space, and I was like, oh, what do I do with this now? And so I was like, oh, why don't we put Thorn in there? Like, you know, that'd be a cool idea. Like, because I had like these scripts for his own kind of movie, so I was like, okay, we'll do that, and we'll kind of use this as kind of like a soft launch for him. We'd done a short film which had been fairly popular as well, so like I was like, okay, let's bring him over into this, and then so he kind of ended up like being like de facto the favorite, because he was like the coolest guy who had spent the most time developing in the first place, and then he kind of got dropped into this ensemble movie. And then non-stop from there I got, when's Thorn getting his own movie? And I was like, okay. And so that was kind of how it happened really. For a long time I was really worried then I couldn't make a film without Thorn in it, like, because we did that short, and that kind of got us a loads of kind of publicity, which helped us make Slasher House, which then helped us make the Thorn movie. And then I was like, okay, well, what are we going to do next? Can I make anything without Thorn in? Will people watch anything without Thorn in? So that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, he almost wasn't in. He was almost a separate entity to the whole thing. But after we did Thorn and Cleaver, I kind of sat down and went like, okay, like I got to double down somewhere. Yeah. The plan initially was to do like a MYCHOVerse movie, and then maybe do something else, and then do a MYCHOVerse. And I kind of thought, okay, like this is a lot of work just to get like a couple of these, one or two of these done a year. Like, so I've either got to shit or get off the pot, really. Like, you know, like, so I went, okay, like this is my thing. Like, the MYCHOVerse will be my focus. Like, and so that's been that for about 10 years now, just solely focused on that.
And we're showing The Wrath of Thorn at HORRHIFFIC. Again, we are showing it on Saturday, the 1st of March, screen 8 at 2 p.m. What can our audiences expect from The Wrath of Thorn?
I think because it's the 11th film in a series, that sounds like it's really inaccessible. But like as you'll know, and I've talked about it before, like I write every single film I write as if no one's ever seen another one of them before. You know, Stan Lee always used to say that every comic's someone's first comic, and so it's kind of, you've got to write it in that way. And so Wrath of Thorn, although it's the third part of the trilogy, it is very accessible. It kind of catches you up on where you need to be, kind of from the offset. But yeah, it is also quite different, I think, to the other two Thorn films. It's more, I wanted to do something that was kind of like a bit post-apocalyptic, like had a bit of a kind of Bronx Warriors kind of feel to it, you know, like, but it's also kind of like got a lot of kind of Mad Maxian kind of vibe to it as well. And just, I mean, it's a film that shouldn't exist on the kind of budgets that we work on, really. Because it is just so massively expansive. Like Slasher House 3 was expansive but contained. But this is expansive and goes out into like the world.
The big bad world, yeah.
And it's so that was, you know, I mean, if you watch it for nothing else, watch it to see how we tried to kind of take a very limited amount of resources and kind of turn it into, you know, like I say, like a post-apocalyptic kind of adventure film. It's got a lot of I'm trying to think of some films that kind of it vibes with, but it's kind of like Friday the 13th, Jason Goes to Hell.
Yeah, I can see that.
Kind of like the early Mad Max films meets like like Kong Skull Island kind of. It's got like all that kind of stuff mixed into it. Like I've become a big fan of the kind of Godzilla movies over the last half decade. And so I really wanted to kind of also, like Thorn, I think, has become a bit of like a kind of slasher villain where he just walks around stamping on people's heads and mushing them up and, chopping their arms off and whatever. And so I wanted to kind of go back to a little bit of like making him scary again, like making him like, something that people are like fearful of rather than like, because I think by the time we did the prequel, we were getting to like a bit of Jason territory where you just walk in and go, squash it. And I kind of wanted to kind of take that idea of the more serious Godzilla movies and kind of go, okay, let's like apply that to like a kind of slasher movie that's set in like a post-apocalyptic wasteland. There's also a lot of Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead kind of mixed in there as well. So it's a hotbed of various influences. But yeah, it's definitely the most ambitious thing I've ever made, and it's I think it's also like narratively probably one of the most powerful things I've ever written, like in terms of characters and what they deal with and their relationships and things like that. It's with some levity, it's the least funny film I think I've ever written in my life, which I became painfully aware of when I watched like the final cut. I was like, oh man, this is not funny at all. Like, because everything, there's a lot of stuff at stake, so it's kind of like it's a lot like the first Thorn film where it leans into the kind of Shakespearean drama of it all, but I mean that's what it wanted to be, and so
exactly. The movie wants what the movie wants, and so you obviously you're going a bit grander, bit more epic, bit more like upscale with this movie, but you are still working on the budget that you're kind of a little bit used to, maybe a little bit more, but kind of the budget that you are used to. And with that, you obviously are a little bit restricted in places. Was there anything that maybe like money-wise or time-wise that you were a little bit restricted with, so you had to maybe compromise the original sort of vision for it, but actually the way you then did it benefited the movie and looks a lot better than you thought it could?
Yeah, I think so. There was some stuff, like some location stuff where we'd kind of agreed, like, on a handshake to like help someone with something, and they'd kind of loan us the location and stuff. And then we're like 4 days into shooting, and I'm like, we were shooting all over. So I was like, we shot some of this in Romford, and so we were there for 2 days, and then suddenly, wham! Right in the middle of trying to cart everyone. One of them has been a 6-year-old actress. Like, we carted all these people all over the place. We were staying in central London as well, so it was like all this stuff's going on. And then this location went, okay, so if we just book you in, and then slapped us with this huge bill before we started, and we were like, oh, like that's like half our budget, like and so we were like, well, what do we do? Like, and at this point, one of our other locations had fallen through as well, and so we'd already been running around trying to find a replacement for that. But we called up like an old location that we'd used a few years ago, and basically just said, hey, we filmed here a few years ago. Can we come and do a couple of days there? We'll kind of try and keep out the way and stuff. And they were like, yeah, can you come and tell us what it is? And so we went and did that. But it used to be like a kind of really abandoned, like, kind of munitions factory, and now it's like a fully functioning like place with like shops and cafes and stuff. And they were like, oh yeah, cool, come film there. And I was like, all right, cool. And we get there, and it's just all these kind of, which was great, because we were like, okay, we can go and break it. People want to go and get coffee and tea, and there's like a library up there and stuff. It was great. Yeah. Antique shops for like props and things. It was amazing. But at the same time, just constant people, traffic, which we'd never had there before. But then all this location stuff fell through. And so I just kind of went wandering around this place, and I found around the back of it just this kind of old wasteland where people had just been throwing stuff, and I was like, okay, like, this is free to film in though, right? Like, so I went and said, can we film there for a couple of days? And they were like, yeah, sure. So I was like, cha-ching, okay, so that's solved one of our location problems. But the location that was trying to charge us the money was 2 different locations. So luckily we've got a studio at Milton Keynes. It's very small. But we basically, as to not get in anyone's way, waited till everyone had kind of piled out for the day. So about 8 o'clock at night we turned up, and we basically just dressed this place to look like a high school within like 2 hours. And I think it looks way better than what we originally had access to. And the big thing was as well, we had way more control over it because it was our studio.
Yeah.
So we were really familiar with it. All our stuff was there. Like all our props and everything. So all our kind of 10 years worth of like stuff is now stored there.
Yeah.
So anything we needed, we knew where it was instantly. And so, yeah, we just basically kind of went through all our old costumes, all our old stuff, all our old props, and went, wait, what high school stuff? Get it in this corridor, like as quickly as you can. And we basically just built the whole thing from scratch in a couple of hours, including Eve's little hovel. She's got like we ran around like kind of like building like a little shack that she'd been living in basically what was like the fire escape vacuum. 2 doors and then a fire escape, and it kind of, so it's like a little space in there, and we just basically built this like room in there. We stole someone's bed from like their art project. I sent everyone out, go and find stuff that we can build a hollow with, like a little kind of hovel with, and the girls came back with like this like bed and put it in. I was like, oh, that's great. Like a little mattress. And then this guy just appeared and went, that's part of my installation, can I have it back, please? Just to like walk back out, and I was like, oh shit, but yeah, it was and I think all that stuff worked out. I just never would have considered using the studio, and it was just the morning that we needed to do it. I went, how are we going to do this? And I just went, what have I got access to? And we just went, okay, studio, like, can we make that work? And so I think it worked out better than paying for this like exorbitant location that we had access to. So I think it made the film better, and it obviously meant that money could go to like feeding people and stuff like that, which was a big deal. It was, that worked out really well. We had another one where we tried to book a location, and they just were like, no reason or anything, and we were like, oh, okay, we'd used it a bunch of times before. Left it in good nick. So I basically went to Milton Keynes Museum while it was open, and found the manager and said, hello, can we film here, please? Because they put like a huge open space at the back. And he just said, yeah, sure. And they left the toilets and stuff open for us, which was really nice of them, because we were shooting there after hours. But connected to the toilets was like an old kind of like war era, kind of, because it's a museum, like an old war era setup kind of living room and kitchen. And so I was like, there was a bit in the script that I thought was going to have to be like voiceover. And I was like, I had both my actors there, so I just said, okay, come with me really quickly. And we shot the opening scene in this kind of like authentic kind of old school era farmhouse kind of set that was made up for the museum. Like while the actors were getting changed in the toilets, and that just had so much production value to it. And it was just a pure accident that happened, because we're using like the grounds outside to shoot the opening of the film.
So cool when you can do that. So the props you mentioned, I don't want to go into spoiler territory or anything, but I do want to quickly ask about the mech suit prop.
Okay.
How do you come about making something like that on the kind of budget you're on for an independent film? Because it looks pretty sick. It looks pretty awesome. So how did you go about putting that together?
So I was going through the prop list that my wife kindly made for me, because I'm terrible at things like So I was going through the prop list. It was about 3 weeks before, and like I was looking and I went, okay, mech suit. That's the big one. And then just out the corner of my eye, I noticed giant stone throne for church, and I was like, how have I forgotten about that? Like, so we were 3 weeks out, so I had 3 weeks to build those two things simultaneously. But the mech suit, I guess, is the more interesting one. So I'd had this idea. This idea has been in my mind for about 10 years, where I knew it was going to end with like a kind of aliens style showdown.
Yeah.
And so initially I did a lot of research into like bear armor and kind of all that kind of thing, and I thought, okay, like, but where do you get that from? Like, and it's hella expensive, you know. And so another thing I do quite often is watch something called homemade movies.
Right.
And it's where they basically remake movies, but like in their garage with like cardboard and like, you know.
Oh yeah.
And like polystyrene and action figures and all this. And I watch a load of that stuff. And over the years, I've watched that and kind of gone, okay, so like you can pretty much make anything, but it'll look janky as fuck. Like, you know, they'll make like, you know, robots out of paper plates and boxes and stuff. And I'm like,
yeah.
But what if you just took the principle of that, but just used slightly better materials to begin with?
Yeah.
And so the mech suit, I kind of used that principle where I was just like, okay, so like, how do you like backyard make an alien mech suit? Like, you know, and so that was made from a bunch of innards from big TVs, you know, like the big polystyrene things. Yeah. I found the biggest weed killer backpack that I could, like a base for that, jammed that into it, and like so that it had some straps, and then I made the frame out of it's, you know, like kids' goal sets, like you put in your backyard. I got one of those and basically measured it all up and just chopped it down and remade the goalie frame into like this kind of frame for it. And then a lot of it was running around finding like the right kind of guns for it, that's probably what I spent the most money on, was finding something that was flat so I could adhere it to the arms, but also that wasn't too heavy. So I'd have to get these things, take them all apart, pull out all the innards and everything that was making them heavy, put the plastic shells back together, and then kind of try and attach them to this thing. And then the chainsaws were the cheapest part. They're like kids' chainsaws. They were like £2.50 each in like the range sale about 5 years ago, and I just bought them and put them in a box and went, I know when they're coming out. And then the time came and I was like, here we go, get the chainsaws out. One of them was like in pieces because one of my kids had been playing with it for, you know, for years. But yeah, so I found all the bits for that all went together. But I will say that, I mean, it looks quite good on its own, but what really sells it is Paris's acting. I had no idea till I said action that he was going to also bring the movement to it that he did. And the second he did that, I was like, okay, like, this is probably the best stuff I've ever shot, like, in my life. Like, you know, like, it just looks way more expensive than it has any right to, because it is essentially like a bunch of polystyrene with like nerve, you know, at its base.
It does look fantastic, and you're absolutely right. Like, I haven't met you guys for House 3, I believe it was, at the last festival, and speaking to Paris and the kind of guy he was, like, as soon as he puts that thing on, you, like, instantly, even I knew, like, this is going to go to the next level, because he's just so excitable anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, this is going to go to the next level, and it absolutely did, and I really wanted to, like, bring that up because I think it's a great moment, and it does look $1 million for the budget you're on. It looked fantastic. So,
oh, thank you. That was a great stress of mine, and also you couldn't move it without it falling to pieces. So like, it got moved around to like from like house to set while we were filming, and I just thought this thing is never going to survive, but somehow it did. But yeah, even on the last night, I was still gluing pieces onto it, and with hot glue in a battery-powered hot glue gun in a church, like, you know, trying to yeah. But it's yeah, I appreciate it. That was the most work that went into anything on the film was this awful mech suit. And the leg braces as well. We found some. I got some leg braces in like a cosplay job lot trunk years ago, and whacking them on him just puts the whole thing together. Really
sells it.
Yeah.
So we do have another feature that we're going to be showing. It's an anthology feature, which is the second half of the MYCHO Grindhouse, as we're calling it now. By the way, we're stealing that, and Spencer's going to have to.
Please.
He's going to have to change that section to that.
There's the cocktail to go with it. That's all I'm saying. Like,
oh,
no
nice.
Pressure, no pressure, but if you know the right person to have a word with, that would be.
So we're showing Horrorscopes Volume 3. It's a horror anthology. I believe your show was it Aquarius, Tormentor the Demon?
Yeah, that's me, yeah.
That's your part of it. So anthology horrors are having quite a resurgence as of late, and people are really getting back into them, I think, and especially at our festival, we've had a few over the last few years. What do you think it is about anthology horror that people are really into again?
Well, I think there are two different types of anthology horror. So I think there are like the kind that are kind of overseen by a creative team generally. You know, so everything's kind of ebbs and flows into itself. And then there's stuff like the ABCs of Death and kind of like and VHS, which feels a little bit more like the filmmakers are given more free reign to kind of go at it. And so I really just approached it from that point of view, because I think anthology films really offer a lot for an audience, because generally you get something out of it one way or the other. Like everybody gets something out of it. Like it's very rare that someone will watch an anthology film, especially something with like 12 films in it, and not see one thing in there that they'll go, okay, well, I didn't like that very serious one there, but I like the art house one in the middle, or I like the funny one halfway through, or what, and so I think that's their appeal, is that they're basically I like things like party movies where like you got a bunch of people over at the weekend and you're like, oh, let's put this anthology on, and like, there'll be something for everyone in there, like a big bag of pick and mix, but a movie. So I think that's their appeal. For me, Making One is really that I only have to do like 7 minutes of the work, and everybody else has to do the rest. So that's quite nice.
And how did you go about putting Volume 3 together? How do you choose who you want to be on board? What's the mission statement when you all kind of come together? Like how does that work?
Well, I think most people are carryovers from the first one, but that was what took a long time to put together, was to kind of find the right people. I mean, a lot of it is that I just making movies, you end up working with other directors in other roles, usually as actors, because a lot of directors, not me personally, but a lot of directors are frustrated actors underneath. So like a lot of times directors will go, I'll come be in one of your movies, and like you work with them, and then you end up seeing a lot more of their work kind of via that, or you end up helping out on their stuff. And so over the years, I've kind of like, I know all these like really talented filmmakers, but obviously like, I'm busy directing my own stuff. What can I do with that? All these filmmakers that I know, because I mean, sensibly, what I probably should have done is gone, get some of these people who are way more talented than me to direct MYCHO stuff. But instead, I thought, well, what can I do with them? And so, it was just a case of, well, what if we did an anthology? And so once the idea came up, and then I'd always kind of thought, the title Horrorscopes would make a great anthology. So once I had that thought, then I was like, okay, cool. So that two things, I could not believe it had never been done. And so I was like, okay. And so, but this started like 2016. And it took me till 2020 to have the list of people that I was like, okay, Like, these are the 12 people I think who would be a good fit for this.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that just carried over into the second one with a couple of people kind of doing other stuff and bringing a couple of new people in. And then the third one was the same. We kind of brought back some people who couldn't do the second one because of timing, and people didn't have time to do the third one, so then they just got replaced with. So it's mostly the three films have about 15 filmmakers ish, 15, 16 filmmakers across all of it. So it's mostly the same 12.
Yeah.
Which is great. Works out really well. And I like the big thing for me is letting people have their own kind of creative freedom. Which initially in the first one bit me in the ass a little bit. But just more from a personal thing, as we had a film that just was a bit too extreme to go into the film.
Okay.
I was like, it's awkward to have to tell someone you really like that you can't use their film.
Yeah.
And it's gone on to have a life of its own as a short, so that's fine, and they came back and did one for the second film, so it was
excellent.
No harm or anything. Like, boy, it's one of those awkward. But I learned a lot from that and tried to have more strict guidelines for the second one.
Mm-hmm.
Although then someone turned in the horse penis tranquilizer movie. So I spent a good portion of my that year pixelating a big black dildo from a movie.
I was going to ask as well. That was a question, which you've kind of
done so well that you just kind of go, "Oh, what do I know?"
Exactly. It's like there's something for everyone, I guess. and what's the main difference between like something like the Wrath of Thorn, where it's all you all the time, to something like an anthology horror like Horrorscopes, where you're kind of like, it is still you, and it is still you bringing all this in, but like you see, you only really direct 7 minutes of one of your shorts. Which do you? I mean, it sounds silly to say which do you prefer, but which do you find more gratifying? Making your own thing as big as it is, or bringing all these people together and making something together?
I think it's the same, but for different reasons. So like, when you make your own feature, it's a lot of work, like too much work, really, and it's exhausting, and you're never quite happy with it all. Like, you'll always see the mistakes, and you'll always see, oh, the focus is too soft there, or and all that stuff. You'll always see that, and that goes on for like 90 minutes, 2 hours, or whatever. But with the short stuff, it's so much easier to feel proud of it because you're really proud of all these people, and so you're watching their work and just going, man, these guys are so talented, and like, and then, oh, there's my little 7-minute contribution to kind of this. But generally, you have a much larger feeling of pride sitting watching it, because like this isn't just your voice for 90 minutes or whatever. It's like all your friends' voices at the same time, like, and that's that's nice. So you're proud of them. I think with a feature, you're proud you made it to the end, warts and all. With an anthology, the day before you don't have a feature film, and then the next day you just do. Like, suddenly you go, right, okay, I don't have a feature film. Put them all together. Now I have a feature film there. Like, cool. Which is why the credit sequence is always really elaborate, because I feel like I've been slacking because I've already done 7 things. I'm like, well, I better give it a good credit sequence, like.
It is a hell of a credit sequence, to be fair. It comes on.
That's what I put more work into that than I do into the short film usually. I'll see if a day is getting that right. But I usually have about 24 hours, because I always wait till the end to make my film as well, in case we have a dropout or anything.
Right, so, okay.
Which is what happened the year before. So I had to quickly, like at the last minute, add on another film to my schedule to fill the gap. So I always wait till the end, but then the downside of that is that usually, like, it gets handed over on like the 30th of November or whatever, and
Yeah.
I'm like 28th of November in the alleyway outside my house shooting scenes for this movie. You know, like, goddamn. Yeah. So it's, but yeah, I guess it's just it's two different. Making an anthology is way easier in a lot of ways, although I think also you do find that you've got to deal with a lot more people than you would have in a normal film. You've got to deal with their people, and also, like, I don't know if filmmakers know this. This is going to be a shock revelation, but filmmakers do not want to give you their film. Like not done yet, and I'm like, I understand, but I got to have it at some point. And whether they'll admit it or not, they get mad at you about it. Like, they're like, I need the film, and they're like, I don't want to give it. It's not ready yet. You know, the sound's not mixed properly, or the color grading's not done fully yet, or whatever. And I'm like, I like, it can't go on forever, please.
Yeah.
You know, and so whether they'll admit it or not, they get a bit miffed at you that you're going, "I look, man, I'm sorry, but I gotta have it." Like, you know, which is why, like, festivals always hate me, because like 2 days before, I'm like, "Can I send you this updated version of the film, please?" Sound mix, or like the bit in the middle, or like, you know, and like I'm forever going to festivals with my tail between my legs, going, Can we update the file, the 40 gigabyte file that I made you download 2 weeks ago? Can you do that again? Can I apologize for wasting your time? But I do get it, because it's hard to let these things go. You know, but it's so that there's a big part of dealing with other people, and it does whether you like it or not. Like, some of my closest friends, it's still strained my relationship with them on these anthologies together, because they're like, well, I don't want to hand it over yet. And I'm like, well, like, it's been accepted to a festival now. We have to, it has to go. I'm sorry. You know.
I think that's one of the reasons that I asked the question, because I do wonder, like, you're dealing with one director when it's your own film. You're dealing with like 11 other directors when you're on an anthology, and it's sort of like, and I'm not throwing shade at anyone, but from some directors that I speak to, it's like, it must be, like you say, it must be hard to get it out of them, because it's like, no, it's my baby. Like, leave it alone.
Yeah, a lot of them don't want to give it up to you, and like, so you've got to deal with that as well. And like, but at the same time, like, people are making this movie for your thing, and so like, there's a lot of respect needs to be had for that. Because like, I know so many people who just have like a hard line of like, oh well, you know, go for yourself if you're not going to hand it in on time or whatever. I don't want to be that guy. I respect the time and effort that people put into making these things the way they want to, you know. But at the same time, I'm just forever between like a filmic rock and a celluloid hard place, just you know, squishing me. But I mean, that's part of the battle, isn't it?
Right. You know? So we're going to start wrapping out in a second, but I have some little random questions that I want to ask you before we head out. And one of them is that I went over to the website. I've been on your website a couple of times, the MYCHO website, and I see games up there. I see comic books up there. I see animations up there. I see all your films up there. How big is the MYCHO team?
You want the real answer?
I think I know the real answer, which is why I'm asking.
This is not because this is not to do down anyone's
no
you know, input into it, because I have a lot of great people who do a lot of great stuff for me. But I mean, when it comes down to the nitty gritty, it always has to be me, and that's really because over the years, it's just, it doesn't pay a lot of money, like, if anything, like, you know, so I have a real issue with asking people to do things that I know just monetarily aren't worth anything, you know. And so I feel the need to do like the comic stuff. I mean, a lot of it's just other ways to tell stories, really. But I mean, yeah, because it'd be amazing to be sat here with a team behind me. Where I put them right now, I have no idea. But you know, we've done that in the past when we were doing more commercial stuff. We used to have like a constant team of like 3 people who were editing and doing VFX and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that was for much more commercial work. And over the years, I've kind of realised that, like, although that pays the bills, that's not where my heart is. My heart is in being creating stuff. Like,
yeah.
And so that with that comes less money and less people to do things. I mean, that's it. On the movie stuff, I'm very lucky. I have people like Martin Payne and Murray, Lewis, Adam Lesmore, Jack, Will, who contribute in different ways across, like whether it's helping me with like with writing stuff or helping me. Martin does a lot of our production management. Murray comes and does whatever is needed. Adam plays every character in every film at some point. Will is like again in our staple of act. Well, again, a lot of these people are actors as well who are in our kind of staple of people. So in terms of the films, that the load is a lot lighter because that's the way it's evolved. But in terms of like the comics and the games, like I don't know any other programmers, because if I did, I'd get them to do it and not me. Which was initially the goal. I was trying to find a programmer who would help me develop these games that I had these ideas for. And when that didn't work out, I taught myself how to do it. And the same kind of went with comics, where I wanted to kind of expand out into that medium. Big fan of comic books. Always wanted to see our characters in comics, and so it was kind of a case of just I can draw to some degree, and so I was like, oh, okay, like, well, I mean, I'm not in competition with anyone to be the greatest artist in the world, so it's just about telling the story. So I was like, okay, I'll do it myself, like, and then that became like a thing where, okay, I'm going to tell this story, it's going this portion of it's going to be in a comic book, but then I have to do that on my own. And yeah, so it's the same with all that stuff, where it's just kind of like, well, like I say, I mean, if someone's watching this and they're like, I just want to draw comics for the pure goddamn love of it, please let me know. Or I just want to program games just because I can't get enough of those numbers. I'll be like,
exactly though.
Please.
But that it's hugely impressive when you go on the website and you see what you all have there. Like, you talk about the Ask You universe earlier, saying that that's a bit of an inspiration, and of course Kevin Smith does that. Obviously, he'll have teams and teams of people doing that for him. But like, he has the comic books, he has the extra stuff. So to go on and see what you're doing at this level and how you're doing it, it's impressive. You've got some really cool like supplementary stuff on there.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, again, it's just out of this pure need to create, and because I mean, I've undone myself because I grew up not only as a fan of movies, but as a fan of comic books and video games, and and all that stuff. And so, like, I'm never happy with just that one thing. And then this year, I was like, okay, I'm going to make like an animation. I'd been kind of tentatively, because I do a lot of artwork, working my way towards doing small things like that. And so I was like, okay, like, how can I make this work? And so I did a bunch of hand drawn stuff, and it was like not great because animation's hard. Comic drawing a picture's easy, drawing a comic is harder. Doing animation is infinitely harder than that. Like, but I came up with a system, a really good way of doing it, kind of implementing kind of like computer animation and stuff like that as well, which I had to teach myself how to do. But then that meant I could tell animated stories really quickly as well. So I was like, okay, cool, this is great. I also should mention that I grew up being a massive fan of action figures as well. So that's been on the cards for about 5 years. And from scratch, I taught myself how to model and make action figures.
See what I mean though? But like, who else out there is creating their own universe, is creating comic books, features, games, models? Who else out there is doing that, MJ? You need to give yourself a bit of a pat on the back.
I guess for me, it's just a need to do it. Like, like I say, I mean, there's not a lot of money in independent film just generally. Like, it's not like, you know, I don't feel like, like the stuff I'm making is just not making any money and it's just me. This is across the board for everybody. So, but also, like, I don't think the creativity should be tied to commercial success. Like, ever.
Exactly.
And like, you know, you don't paint Picasso didn't paint pictures because he wanted to get rich, did he? He did it because it's his need to create. And so, not that I'm comparing myself to Picasso. maybe I look like one of his paintings a little bit, you know. But that's probably about about it. But yeah, not like it's just I think creativity is just like a thing that you have to do. So I find it, I guess as well, I find it difficult to congratulate myself because it's to be honest, I feel like it's kind of like my destiny is just to create this nonsense, you know. Like,
there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all.
I'm quite happy with my creative lot in life, you know. Like, and the upside of it is I meet loads of cool people and talk about it, you know, all the time, and that's what it's all about, you know. But that said, if anybody wants to come and help me do any of that stuff, please take some of the workload off me. I would love that.
So if you could, if it was possible to do a classic horror movie crossover in the style of like Freddy versus Jason or anything like that, who would you put Thorn up against in his own movie like crossover?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think probably either Angela from Sleepaway Camp.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of Sleepaway Camp movies, so or Mary Sue from the Prom Night sequels, maybe something like that. I'm a big fan of those as well. So I don't know. You know, or like, I guess, I mean, it'd be fun to see Thorn go up against one of the big boys. But I guess if we're keeping it like indie, you know, it could be good to see him kind of go up against like Art the Clown or something. I guess that feels like a much more kind of independent kind of space, you know. And
I like,
you know, that's more of the generation I think Thorn comes from, is that kind of, you know, the modern kind of slasher resurgence. So yeah, I guess that could be a good fit, I think. But yeah, like outside of like guys in Winnie the Pooh masks and that, I don't feel like we've had many big slasher movies over the.
Not recently, no, not really. No,
so,
not.
I mean, Art the Clown kind of does what he does, and he does it well, I guess. So it's it would only be beneficial to me. It wouldn't be beneficial to those guys at all. But yeah,
if you could show The Wrath of Thorn, or it could be any of your MYCHOverse movies, but we'll go with The Wrath of Thorn right now. If you could show that movie to any one director, legendary director, can be alive or dead right now, but if you could show it to any one of them and get some feedback from, who would you show The Wrath of Thorn to and why?
Well, I would have said John Carpenter, but I just know that it'd be like, yeah, I don't fucking care about that. Like,
I don't think John Carpenter cared much about anything.
Like a grand critique from him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I guess Kevin Smith really inspired the start of this whole thing. I grew up on his movies, like from the 90s and, you know, into the early 2000s as a kind of teenager. That's what inspired me to kind of start making my own stuff. You know, outside of a lot of other filmmakers, but I guess, you know, I think Kevin Smith would be a good shout to put my movies in front of. I don't know whether he'd like them because he's not. I mean, he does make horror movies every now and then.
Yeah.
And I love Yoga Hoses. I think that's great. You know, his much maligned Canadian Nazi movie. I'm all over it. But yeah, so I think Kevin Smith probably would be a good shout. Although he's not particularly a famous horror director, I guess. Or Steve Wang, who directed Guyver 2, Dark Hero.
Nice.
Hit Drive. Because he's like probably one of my favorite directors of all time. So
well, there we go.
But I mean, I did send him one of my movies, the very first Thorn short film. I sent him that in the late 2000s, and he was very, very complimentary about it. So I guess
there you go.
kind of ticked that off the bucket list a little bit. But it'd be nice for him to see one, how much of his work I've ripped off over the last 10 years. And two, like, how far I've come since then, so...
Exactly, man. Well, let's get to work on that. Let's make that happen.
Okay.
MJ, this has been absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to show both your movies at the festival, obviously back-to-back. That's going to be an awesome little double feature. Thank you for submitting to them to us. Thank you for letting us have them, and I can't wait to see you when we get down there. But just to round out, the last thing I like to do is, obviously we're showing at the festival, but what happens next with The Wrath of Thorn? Where do we go from here? And what does MJ have next?
For Wrath of Thorn, I think I usually do a festival run up until about September, October-ish. And then we'll look to either, if we haven't found a good deal in terms of distribution, we'll probably usually put out our own kind of limited physical version of it before we kind of go to streaming. So that'll probably be the roadmap for it. We're a little behind because Slash House 3's been delayed, so that'll probably come out a little bit earlier in the year, so that'll take up some focus from that. But and outside of that, this year we just started prepping for our first web series, which is kind of like we're doing it as like a serial, like the old Flash Gordon stuff.
Nice, cool.
But it's also a prequel to Slasher House, but disconnected. But it's about the bad guy from Slasher House. It's kind of his origin story, really. But there's a kind of Flash Gordon-esque serial set in the 70s, so it's kind of so that's fun, but quite short. And then we've got Bannister Doll Heist, the sequel to Bannister Doll House. Which we're hoping to get done kind of early quarter this year. And then for the summer, we're doing Cleaver 3, Maximum Cleavage, which is like our big project for the year. So I'm just mad excited about it. We just confirmed some of like the main cast to come back the last couple of days. But there are also we're drawing from all over the MYCHO universe. So there's kind of favourites from all different movies coming over to like the Cleaver stuff for a bit for this one movie. So it's going to be like it's the one I've been most looking forward to out of all the we did a slate 5-6 years ago of all the upcoming stuff and all the ideas for it, and this was the one I was like, I cannot wait to get to Maximum Cleavage. Like, that's so much fun to make and hopefully to watch.
Was that a case of you hadn't even written anything yet, but you had the perfect title?
Well, actually, the idea was going to be, and then I was like, are we really going to call it Maximum Cleavage? And we'd moved away from that. But then talking to people this year, they were like, no, you've got to keep the title. Like,
you have to.
And I was like, okay, fine. It's been an ongoing joke. We used to do crowdfunders, and the top tier thing would be called Maximum Cleavage.
Brilliant.
So then I'd always joke, it's going to be the title of the third movie.
That's one of those things that, like, how sometimes when you're walking through like the shops like HMV or the supermarkets or whatever, and you see a case on the shelf and you see the name of the movie, you see the subtitle of the movie, you're gonna pick that up.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what, you're picking that up, and you're probably gonna buy it just out of curiosity. So now you've got a fantastic title, and then you win them over with the story and the film itself.
Well, that's the dream, isn't it? If everyone wants a killer clown prison break drama, then there'll be Maximum Cleavage is the film for them.
Telling you, man, that's a winner for me already.
Cool. Amazing. Yeah. So we've got that and some comics and games some other nonsense probably. A bunch of short films as well. We run a Patreon where we make kind of that allows us to make short films around the features, which is a thing that was lacking for quite a long time, because features take so much kind of financial effort and work. So the Patreon kind of helps make short movies. So yeah, we're doing some stuff for that as well. We've got a film called Kill Will, which is a kind of little anniversary movie that kind of goes over the many deaths of Will Marshall and why that's been the secret to why that's been happening for the last decade. And yeah, our usual. We've got Sleep of Fools 2000 is coming in April as our space opera short slasher spoof thing. Just a lot of nonsense. It's all on the website. If you go to myco.co.uk, you can find all this absolute garbage right there. Just
absolutely, and I'll put all that stuff in the bio down below as well, and hopefully get some more eyeballs to it, because I think what you're doing over there, and I think that this little section of the universe that you've cut out for yourself with your movies, I think it's fantastic, and I love seeing what you're doing. I'm quite impressed you have time to do a lot of that stuff, because my God, I've barely got time to do these things. So
I mean, what you've got to learn is to not sleep.
Yeah, that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah, that's it. But you need to clone yourself as well as the other one. I call it mycoplicity.
I like. See, you should just. So MJ, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and doing this. Thank you for giving us the movie and the anthology as well to show at the festival. We always love having you at Romford Horror Festival. You bring a definite vibe with your gang, and we love seeing you all there. So thanks again for giving us your film.
You're welcome. See you at the MYCHO Grindhouse afternoon.
That's getting done. I'm just going to have to message Spencer now.
I don't know who we need to talk to, but if there's a cocktail to go with that, I promise you, I'll drink them all weekend.
There has to be.
I'll throw that money over if there's a cocktail for the MYCHO Grindhouse afternoon, I'll throw that money across that bar.